Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a vast ocean, feeling the salty breeze on your skin, watching the waves crash onto the shore. The waves come and go, rising high, then gently receding back into the depths. But what if I told you that emotions are just like those waves? They rise up, crash over us, and then disappear, only to return again with the same intensity. But here's the twist. What if you're not just standing at the edge of the ocean watching those waves? What if, without realizing it, you're the one pushing those waves back into the ocean, only to have them crash right back at you again and again in a different form? What if the emotions you've been ignoring, the anger, the sadness, the fear, are not disappearing, but rather repeating through your actions, your behavior, and even your relationships? Now, imagine that these emotions are not just something you feel, but something that controls how you show up in the world. Unprocessed emotions are not just fleeting experiences. They are patterns that repeat themselves in ways that you may not even notice. And when we don't deal with them, they start to shape us in ways we can't even imagine. Stay with me, because today, we are going to explore how unprocessed emotions don't disappear. They show up through your behavior. And once you understand this, you'll begin to reclaim control over the most powerful part of yourself. Emotions are powerful. We all experience them every day. Some of us embrace them, some of us avoid them. But no matter how we try to handle them, emotions have an undeniable impact on how we live, how we react, and how we interact with others. But here's the truth. Emotions are energy. They rise in response to the world around us, to our experiences, our thoughts, and the situations we find ourselves in. And like energy, they don't just disappear when we suppress them. They simply shift, finding new ways to express themselves. We've all been there. You feel anger bubbling up inside of you, or perhaps sadness weighing down your chest, and instead of fully processing it, you push it away. You tell yourself, I don't have time for this right now, or I'll deal with this later. But the truth is, unprocessed emotions never truly go away. They settle in, they hide, and they start to shape how we act, how we speak, and how we behave, often without us even realizing it. So why do we ignore them? Why do we push them away, thinking they'll disappear on their own? We live in a world that values productivity, efficiency, and moving on to the next task. We're taught to just get over it and move on. But what if I told you that this approach to emotions is not only ineffective, but also harmful in the long run? Because when emotions are not processed, they don't just fade into the background. They repeat through our behaviors. They show up in how we react to stress, how we engage with others, and how we make decisions. Let's take a closer look at how this happens. Imagine for a moment that your emotions are like waves in the ocean. The ocean is vast, expansive, and always in motion. But when you don't allow yourself to process the waves, when you push them back into the water instead of letting them pass, they come back stronger. They build and crash with even greater force. And no matter how hard you try to ignore them, they find a way to resurface. That's what happens with unprocessed emotions. When we don't fully experience them, they don't vanish. They linger beneath the surface, and eventually, they repeat through our behaviors. Let's break this down. Repressed anger. You might think that suppressing your anger means it's gone, but the next time something minor happens, you find yourself reacting in a way that seems disproportionate. This isn't random. It's the anger from the past that hasn't been fully dealt with, showing up again, often in a more subtle form. Unhealed grief. Perhaps you lost someone dear to you, but instead of grieving fully, you push it aside, telling yourself, I'll deal with it later. But later never comes, and that grief lingers. It shows up in how you interact with others, how you avoid deep connections, or how you close yourself off from the world. Unresolved fear. Fear, when left unprocessed, often shows up in our behavior through anxiety or avoidance. You may find yourself holding back from pursuing your dreams because of a fear that was never fully addressed. And this fear keeps repeating itself, creating patterns of inaction. These behaviors are not random. They are the result of emotions that have been ignored or repressed, and instead of disappearing, they find new ways to express themselves. And the longer we avoid processing them, the more entrenched these patterns become. One of the most significant places unprocessed emotions show up is in our relationships. Think about a time when a minor disagreement escalated into a major argument. It might have started over something small. Maybe someone said something you didn't like, or someone cut you off in a conversation. But what happened? The reaction was out of proportion to the event. That's because the emotions you didn't process, the past hurts, the unresolved anger, the unspoken frustrations, they repeated in your reaction. The current event was merely the trigger for a deeper, unaddressed emotion that had been festering inside. How often do we find ourselves reacting in ways that we don't fully understand? Why do we suddenly snap at people we love or react defensively when it's unnecessary? The answer lies in our unprocessed emotions. They are the unseen drivers behind the way we behave, often making us act out of old wounds or unresolved trauma. But here's the powerful shift. When we begin to process our emotions, we can stop these patterns from controlling us. By facing our emotions head-on, we allow ourselves to break free from the cycle of repetitive behaviors, and we can start showing up in our relationships with authenticity and presence. Unprocessed emotions don't just affect our behavior or relationships. They also take a toll on our mental and physical health. When we suppress emotions, whether it's stress, sadness, or anger, we are essentially holding them inside our bodies. And over time, this internal pressure can manifest as physical symptoms. It could be headaches, tightness in your chest, or an overall sense of fatigue. These symptoms are your body's way of signaling that something is out of balance. On a mental level, unprocessed emotions can lead to chronic anxiety, depression, or a general sense of overwhelm. When we don't process our feelings, we carry them with us, and they weigh us down, slowly eroding our well-being. In fact, studies have shown that suppressed emotions are directly linked to stress-related illnesses. When we ignore our emotions, our body responds with increased levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, which affects everything from our immune system to our digestive system. But the good news is, when we begin to process and release our emotions, our bodies can begin to heal. By allowing ourselves to fully experience and release feelings, we can start to reclaim our physical and mental health. If you've made it this far, I want you to reflect on something. What emotions have you been ignoring or suppressing in your life? What patterns or behaviors do you keep repeating because of unprocessed feelings? I encourage you to take a moment and commit to processing your emotions. The next time you feel a strong emotion, instead of pushing it away, take the time to sit with it. Ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to teach me? And then, let it go. If you found this video valuable, please like this video to show your support for this important conversation. Comment below and share your own experiences with processing emotions, or let me know how you plan to break the cycle of repetitive behaviors in your life. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe to Awaken Your Essence so you can continue on this journey with us, exploring the depths of personal growth, healing, and emotional freedom. We're here to awaken the most powerful version of yourself, and I'm so glad you're a part of this community. Remember, emotions are not your enemy. They are your teachers. Let's learn to process them, release them, and step into the fullness of who we are.